Okay. I call to order the meeting of the Verona Plan Commission for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 at 6:33 p.m. We'll begin with the roll.
Commissioner Tucker Long,
Here.
Commissioner Hingle,
Here.
Mayor Diaz,
Here.
Commissioner Lytle. Here. Alderperson Posey,
Here.
Commissioner Hankert,
Here.
and Commissioner Powers is absent and excused.
All right. With that, we'll move on to item 3, which is public comment. If somebody from the public wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so. Can you hear me out there? Is the audio? Okay. Well, could be a little louder. Okay. Yes. And if you could introduce yourself and make sure the green light on the microphone is on.
All right, looks like it's all set. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Kirsten Rhymes with Edward Rose and Sons. I'm the Land Acquisitions Manager for the Kalamazoo office. We are here presenting for our new development on PD, and I just wanted to introduce myself and my team. I also have Jean Brenton with our Land Acquisitions team and Greg Stowers, our Kalamazoo office division head in the back, as well as Bill Beesman, who is our local engineer from KL Engineering. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to look over our presentation tonight and to consider our proposal for adding some new apartments to Verona. And I will wait to answer questions after you can go through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so if someone from the public wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so. Seeing nobody moving up to the microphone, we'll move on to item 4, which is approval of the minutes from the August 2nd, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Tucker Long.
I move that we approve the minutes from the August 2nd Plan Commission meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Posey, I believe. Last chance for corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the August 2nd, 2021 Plan Commission meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And the minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to item 5, which is regarding a precise implementation plan, PIP, and conditional use permit for a plan unit development that would allow for the construction of a mixed-use building with 63 apartment units and approximately 6,160 square feet of commercial space with a drive-through located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue. Before we open the public hearing on this topic, can we get a brief overview, Mr. Sayer?
Yes, thank you. Once again, this is the request tonight for a precise implementation plan review for the former Classic site and the Old National property located on West Verona Avenue. This is the final step in the plan development process. This is also your recommendation tonight to the Common Council. The Common Council meets next Monday. As part of this process, we did post a Class 2 public hearing notice in the newspaper. We also placed on the property public hearing notification signs, and then we also mailed out the notification letters to the surrounding neighbors as part of the process. So once again, this is the last step of the process. If this is ultimately approved by the Common Council, the developer then would be able to pull building permits to start the project.
Thank you for that explanation. With that, I will move that we open the public hearing on this topic. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tucker Long. All those in favor of opening the public hearing on this topic, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And we're in the public hearing regarding this topic at 6:37 p.m. Does anyone wish to speak on the Classic redevelopment? Oh, if you could just make your way up to the...
Good evening, everyone. Sean O'Brien from North Point Development. It's wonderful to see you all in person, although, being masked up again is kind of a bummer. But we're in person, so that's a step. It's been a long journey for us with the Classic development. It's really awesome to be back here in front of you all to be requesting this precise implementation plan. Myself and my architect, Bob Feller, are here to answer any questions that you might have. In reviewing the staff report, a couple of things I wanted to address really quickly. First of all, wonderful job, Catherine. It's been a pleasure to work with you. But in the staff report, there's a call out for 8 bicycle parking stalls that we'll have around the the outside of the building. We intend to have about approximately 20 additional biking stalls underneath in the parking garage. The goal is to have somewhere close to a half a biking stall per unit, and so we're also going to be looking to maybe add another 4 to 8 surface stalls as well. So, but we will have a significant, about 20 underneath the building in the parking garage. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was there was a recommendation for an EV parking charging station that would be on the surface, and we can definitely do that. We would probably put it somewhere underneath the covered parking so that it could be shared, with a business use during the day and a tenant use at night. And then we'll also take a look at possibly adding one of those into the underground parking as well. So with that, we are here for any questions. Thank you.
We are still in the public comment regarding the classic redevelopment. If anyone wishes to speak on it, now would be the time to do so. Seeing no people moving to the podium, a motion to close the public hearing would be in order. Commissioner Henkard.
I move to close the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Henkard. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. All those in favor of closing the public hearing on this topic signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the public hearing is closed at 6:39 p.m. Ms. Holt.
Thank you. The project is located in yellow, north of West Verona Avenue. To the west of the project is Sugar Creek Commons project, which is under construction and was approved for 284 market rate apartments. To the south of this project is the former school property that was approved for 100 workforce apartment units and 132 market rate apartments. The project is located in the downtown design neighborhood plan, which is discussed in the staff report. In December of 2020, the Plan Commission approved a general development plan for a 3-story, 63 workforce apartment units with commercial space, which is effective upon the applicant acquiring the property. Parking exemptions were granted as part of this to allow a minimum parking requirement of 1 underground parking space per unit. Table 1 in the staff report shows the approved general development plan requirements and the proposed precise implementation plan proposal. This plan was approved under the previous zoning and sign ordinance and is evaluated for the precise implementation plan under this ordinance. As part of the precise implementation review, the Plan Commission can comment on landscaping, lighting, and building design. The applicant is providing additional underground parking more than what is required for the minimum parking spaces, which are 75 underground parking spaces. There are 53 surface parking stalls proposed, which will accommodate Old National Bank and the unknown commercial tenant. Although not required in this zoning ordinance, the applicant just clarified that they will be providing more surface bicycle stalls and underground bicycle parking for the residents. And they also clarified that the electric charging vehicle station will be installed underground and at the surface. Landscaping plans were submitted as part of this application. The applicant is providing a 6-foot-tall decorative panel fence along the north property line by the residential homes with shrubbery surrounding the drive-through area. The applicant is able to keep 2 large existing trees in the northern area of the property. The proposed project requires 1,200 landscaping points, and the applicant has exceeded the 2024 landscaping point requirement. Staff has no concerns with the landscaping. A lighting plan was submitted. There will be wall-mounted fixtures as well as pole-mounted lights on the property. The lighting does not exceed 0.4 foot candles at the property line, which meets the zoning ordinance requirements. The applicant is proposing the same design of building as previously seen in the general development plan. The building contains a mix of brick veneer in 2 different colors and composite siding. The building height was approved as part of the general development plan, but the building design and architecture is reviewed as part of this application. Staff is supportive of the design as it mixes the Alexander Company of Steve Brown approved building design as well as similar buildings from the former New Century building. And then you can see the other designs. In this one here, there is a conditional use permit that is requested for Old National Bank to have 2 drive-through bank tellers. The drive-through is being reviewed as part of the current zoning ordinance that was adopted in May of 2021. So we're kind of going in between 2 different ordinances throughout this application. The drive-through meets the general findings, which are the same for a conditional use permit, for every conditional use permit. The specific findings for a drive-through are enclosed in the staff report. These focus on pedestrian safety, screening, height and design of the structure, and queuing length to use the drive-through. The queuing length was adjusted as part of the recently adopted zoning ordinance, which allows different distances for various land uses instead of having the same queuing distance for a restaurant and a bank. The applicant has provided landscaping to screen the drive-through area and deflect headlight glare as required by the conditional use findings. The applicant has met all of the specific standards for a drive-through conditional use permit. Also, as part of this application, the applicant is requesting a certified survey map to combine 4 lots into 1 lot. The certified survey map meets all of the requirements for the suburban commercial zoning district. Staff continues to support this development as the applicant has moved the building away from the northern property line, met the required setbacks, is established enough parking to accommodate tenants and customers on the property, and has exceeded the landscaping requirements. Staff has received 3 comments from the public regarding this iteration of the project. One of the emails staff received is included in the packet that states concerns over visibility and increase in the traffic with on-street parking and a lack of safe bicycle connections. Staff received 2 calls from people from the public hearing signs expressing concerns over a concentration of apartment buildings in this area of Verona, and that Verona cannot handle additional apartments. Tonight, the Plan Commission is reviewing the landscape plan, lighting plan, building design and architecture, the certified survey map, and the conditional use permit for the drive-through. With that, staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend that the Common Council approve the following. Number 1, precise implementation plan for a planned unit development for the construction of a mixed-use building with 63 apartment units and approximately 6,160 square feet of commercial space located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue with the following condition. The approval shall become effective upon North Point Development Corporation acquiring the property. Number 2, conditional use permit for a bank drive-through to be located at the same address. And number 3, certified survey map to combine 4 lots into 1 lot to be located at the same address. With that, staff is here to answer questions as well as the developer and the engineer.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions? We will start on 5A, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a PIP for a PUD for the construction of a mixed-use building with 63 apartment units and approximately 6,160 square feet of commercial space located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue. So, questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Henkard.
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, I had questions on the bike versus the EV, and you addressed it well, the developer there. I'm an avid biker. You would think I would argue for more bike stalls, but I will not, because they can be built easily after the fact. But underground or EV charging stations cannot be easily. So I urge you to, put in as high a voltage as you can, et cetera, because even if you lay the conduit now for future, you can't dictate how many people in the building are going to have a bike or an EV. You can't, but you can plan for it. So plan for what, in my opinion, plan for the EV, because you can't retrofit that easily. I can chain a bike to a tree all day long, so that's not a problem. The fence, the 6-foot fence, you talk about it being visual screen and a noise screen that was mentioned in there. Again, this isn't like a condition or anything, but I can tell you, you build it solid. If you think you're going to build it with like double-sided spaced wood, and that'll be great. No, it won't. If it's not solid, like marine-grade plywood solid, it doesn't block noise and it doesn't block light. So, again, I urge you to follow up with that fence and make it solid. The third comment I have is more of a question for you, Catherine, and/or the engineer. You know, and this is, this ship has sailed, this project's going to happen, and I support it. But, so for example, with the stormwater, we're talking about building little tiny basins on this property versus building massive basins down here, because all of it goes there eventually. I'm just curious, do we need both? Do we need these projects to be trying to site these little tiny ponds on their property when we could build a massive ditch down here? Or is it best to have both, perhaps? And that's a question. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
So it's kind of a preference thing, and I think everyone has a different preference. The city's preference, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is to have like the larger regional treatment facilities. So the issue is that the watershed boundary for the facility here is kind of right in this area. It is going to take Sugar Creek Elementary, so that will drain to this facility. But there's part of that site that's going to be pulled into the watershed, actually, because the dividing line's like right on that property. So
As in the subject property, you mean?
no, I'm talking about Sugar Creek Elementary,
Oh,
which is
okay.
kind of in the same area.
Sure.
So this is just outside of that watershed boundary. So we can't really pull it into this basin. I think, you know, long-term, that would be something that the city's, you know, trying to plan for as much as possible. Certainly, having regional facilities just reduces, like, the amount of maintenance required. Again, that would put the maintenance more on the city side versus on the developer side, but it's one way to control, like, the maintenance that is occurring. So that's kind of
Okay.
the answer.
I see,
But
I
in the-
didn't know that about
In the
the
interim,
divide. I
you know,
thank
in the absence, I guess, of having a regional basin for this property, they have to provide treatment on their site,
Yeah, okay, got it.
so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect answer. While I have the floor, I think that is all. Thank you very much.
Other questions, comments, or motions from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Lytle?
Thank you. You know, when Catherine did the overlay of all the projects either in progress or planned for this area, it did make me think about the question raised by one of the citizen emails that was included in our packet about, you know, how this area is served by bike paths or bike routes, and whether we might be missing an opportunity to, you know, enhance the sidewalk or something to make it both walking and multi-use. So maybe just question to staff about, you know, where we stand in terms of access to downtown via bike routes, specifically from the west, like the person asked, and, you know, what our overall plans are for bicyclists accessing downtown.
Mr. Zaire?
Thank you. I think this was discussed at the council meeting as part of the Sugar Creek School redevelopment project. This was a comment that came up as well regarding bikes. We don't have a good answer, to be quite honest with you. I mean, the reality is, as you get east of this property, the right-of-way shrinks significantly, and it really necks down. So the challenge is with the space. I mean, if you look out at the fire station here, where that bike path just stops at Lincoln Street, part of that is just we just don't have the space to put that in. So that's why there's not really a good answer for it. Obviously, we have on-street bike facilities. That's something that could be looked at east of here as well, towards the downtown, but it would come at a price with the loss of on-street parking as well. So there's a trade-off on each of these items. I think the one option that maybe has some long-term potential viability is trying to look at a connection from the bike trail up to this general area, how to pull people off the bike trail, because that is a kind of that east-west corridor that is very safe to be on, that people feel comfortable traveling on. But even that too is going to take some challenges of potentially acquiring land and a commitment on that too. So, like I said, we don't have a good answer from that standpoint. I think some of the comments we've heard is just from a family standpoint is, if you had a kid and you're pulling it when a trailer behind you, it's not the most comfortable environment to be on, and it's true. I mean, even being a normal biker out there, I think on a busy time of rush hour, it's not going to be that comfortable. But there's no simple solution, I guess. We're aware of it, but without having to acquire a lot of land or potentially take down a building. I mean, that's the challenge we're running into.
And then just the other question I had was, I noticed the total square footage for commercial was slightly higher than for the general development plan. Is that just the project moved forward in design enough that you have more refined numbers for that square footage, or was anything changed as far as the footprint?
Yeah, there's a couple things with that. First is to make the project financially feasible, we asked Old National Bank to take a little bit larger of a space. And we do have the community facilities in what was supposed to be one of the retail tenants originally. So we put that there. And so we combined that, knowing that we would have a littler, I guess, smaller space left over and what would be the marketability of that. But then we also took a look at what would look best along Rita. And if you want to, Catherine, if you can go back to the back of the building rendering, that one. So as you can see on the lower right, there's that bay of windows. And so there was going to be covered parking the entire length of the building. And so what we wanted to do was extend the building out. So if you're driving down Rita, you see the full commercial, not commercial, and that underground covered parking. So we thought it would just look better. And then that also allowed us to create a little bit more patio space for that future tenant as well. So if you go back to the site plan, you'll see that that wedge, we traded, I think, 3 or 4 parking stalls to fill in that space right there. And so you now have kind of a divisible L versus kind of a weird rectangle. So that's what the changes. Thanks.
Other questions, comments, or motions? Alder Posey.
And Sean, you might have to come back up for this one. So my question is regarding the underground parking stalls. One of the things, talking about bike and ped safety, is that line of sight coming out of there. How are we, have you built those and seen any issues? Because we're just starting to see this in our city. And I know down the street it started to show up, and that's what caught my eye recently, especially combined with the email that we got about bike safety. And just want to make sure that there's enough line of sight with that being so close to the road and so impacted that people have enough line of sight.
So are you speaking of coming out of
Where
the
they
garage?
come out of the, not out of the underground 12 parking stalls, sorry, I'm pointing at my thing here, onto West Verona Ave.
Oh, okay, so it's not the
Yeah.
underground parking, but the
So
covered
the
parking?
covered parking. That's
I mean,
the
there's
term.
so we're at this, are we at the 25-foot setback? We're 16 feet?
But the amount of property in front of it, from the property line to the right of way, is at 25 foot.
So we're at 16 feet behind the, yeah, so we're set back 16 feet plus another 25. I think that there'll be a lot of space for someone to safely come out of the underground covered and be able to assess as they get to the sidewalk. And then they would have the sidewalk, which, they would have to decide if they're going to go up and down the sidewalk or if they're going to cross the street. But I wouldn't think that someone, there's a good 30-plus feet that someone would have to travel on their bike before they get to the road.
And
And this is our architect, Bob Hiller. You can also address that, too.
And as a related question with that, is there a sidewalk here that the bikes will be able to exit the property without having to go through the parking lots? Because there's going to be a lot of car traffic going on there, and we're planning for bikes and everything else, which is great, but is there a safe way for them to exit without having to navigate all those parking stalls?
Yeah, if you look on the left, there is a sidewalk to the left of the driveway that goes all the way under the building to actually the covered
Perfect.
bicycles,
Okay.
bicycle parking there. And so there is one access. We don't currently have a second sidewalk that goes from the right side of the covered without having to go into that driveway. We could look at doing that. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. In the vision triangle question, I guess I'd say, most developments, 25 feet is an acceptable distance, so we're, absolutely, my apologies. My name is Bob Feller with Kanothi Bruce. In most developments, 25 feet is an acceptable vision triangle. For an intersection, concerned with automobiles having clear view, so the speed at which a bicyclist would be moving and all this should more than satisfy that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I guess you can sit down. Other questions or comments or motions from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker Long.
One quick comment, and then I can make a motion if we're ready. I think we had discussed back when we were talking about parking flow back in the day, maybe I'm not remembering this correctly, maybe I meant to bring this up, but on the east side of town, we have like an underpass for bikes and pedestrian traffic that goes under Verona Avenue. And I know there was some talk about possibly needing to put a light in down in this area, and if we are digging streets up to put in lights or whatever needs to be done during these developments, it might be a great time to put in one of those pedestrian and bike underpasses. Because I know that's used a lot down on the east side of town. And that might be a way to get people from, for instance, this property in the neighborhoods here over to the bike path on the other side. And then I would like to make a motion. I move that we recommend to the Common Council that they approve the precise implementation plan for the planned unit development for the construction of a mixed-use building with 63 apartment units and approximately 6,160 square feet of commercial space located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue, with the following condition, that the approval shall become effective upon North Point Development Corporation acquiring the property.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? I'll call myself and just say two things real quick. I agree with what Commissioner Hankard said about running the conduit for the EV chargers. I think that's going to be a great feature for the people who live there. And as stated, it's really, really hard to retrofit, or, well, maybe it's easy, but it's really expensive, as I'm sure you know. And then I guess my second one is kind of in line with what Mr. Sayer said about making the areas friendly as possible to people biking, and potentially putting a link into the Military Ridge bike path. I think that might be a way forward. That kind of goes beyond the scope of this issue, but I just wanted to note that. But that was all I had to say. Questions, comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the precise implementation plan for a planned unit development for the construction of a mixed-use building with 63 apartment units and approximately 6,160 square feet of commercial space located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue, with the following condition, which is the approval shall become effective upon North Point Development acquiring the property. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes and will go before the council. Next, we'll move on to 5B, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a conditional use permit for a bank drive-through to be located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue. Questions, comments, or motions on this one? Commissioner Hingle.
I recommend that the Common Council approve a conditional use permit for a bank drive-through to be located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue.
Motion by Commissioner Hingle. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tucker Long. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion to approve the drive-through, or to recommend to the council approve the drive-through? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the conditional use permit for a bank drive-through to be located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 6, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a certified survey map to combine 4 lots into 1 lot to be located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue. Questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Tucker Long.
I move that we recommend to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to combine 4 lots into 1 lot to be located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker Long. Is there a second? second by Commissioner Lytle. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this one? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to combine 4 lots into 1 lot to be located at 410 and 420 West Rowan Avenue, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 7, which is a discussion of possible action regarding an initial review for 396 multifamily units in 11 buildings and 2 commercial lots located at 7085 County Highway PD. Mr. Zaire.
Thank you. Once again, this is an initial review for a project up on County Highway PD. The property is currently located in the town of Verona. There's no action on this tonight. This is the opportunity for the Plan Commission to provide feedback to the applicants, and this would also go on to the Common Council for their meeting next Monday. So the property in question is highlighted in yellow on the screen before you. We have overlaid, just for reference purposes only, the approved Whispering Coves project and plat, and that's just on there for reference purposes. I will note that the Whispering Coves project is most likely changing, specifically for sure with the school site. The school has indicated they don't have any interest in having a school site in this location. But the developer has indicated there will be some potential changes occurring on the changes occurring on the rest of the plat as well. So, like I said, this is just for reference purposes, but the property in question is the property highlighted in yellow on the screen before you. This is the overall neighborhood plan of this entire area. The Draeger property is approximately in this location here. We did have some commercial uses planned along County Highway PD, and there was multifamily, then also suburban residential development. One of the main connection points for this property is the star right here. That's an access point that lines up across the street from the University Ridge Golf Course. So that was a critical point of making sure that those 2 points lined up as part of any development of this property. The concept that's before you tonight has, once again, 396 units. Those are spread out over 11 buildings as depicted on the site plan before you. There are 2 commercial outlots on the plan. There's approximately 4 total acres of commercial land that is planned as part of this development. Those commercial outlots have been situated along that intersection that I just mentioned, the one that lines up with the University Ridge Golf Course. There is a public road that would traverse the site from north to south to get back to the University Ridge access point, and would connect into Morningside Boulevard, which is currently under construction. There is also an east-west road, which is planned as part of this development, that would stub into the Endress property, which is east of the site, and then also would connect into the Whispering Coves development to the west. Stormwater management consumes a pretty good chunk of this property. This is in a closed stormwater basin. What that means is that the water has no natural outlet. So in essence, this is a bucket that fills up. In order to get the water out of the bucket, there's actually for Whispering Cove, there's a pump station that's planned to pump the water west. So it's a challenging property because it's in a closed basin. That's why the stormwater ponds in this location are the size that they are, just because of that closed basin issue. As part of the project, the applicant is proposing 132 enclosed garages and then 128 parking stalls. As part of their submittal, they did submit some conceptual elevations that they've done for other projects in the area. Probably the one big difference that, from what we've seen before, we talk a lot about underground parking and underground parking spaces. For this project, they would be loading the parking under the building on the first floor level, so it wouldn't be in that basement level, it'd be on that first floor level. That's something that obviously the Plan Commission hasn't seen much of over the course, at least my time here. Overall, they have some nice looking buildings, variety of architecture. Some other examples that staff went out and just located here, some other buildings that Edward Rose and Sons owns elsewhere in the country. Obviously, we haven't gotten to that point of what do the buildings look like. They haven't created those drawings, but if the Plan Commission has any specific feedback for the applicant, I would encourage you to provide that tonight. Once again, just overlaying the project, this is the approved Whispering Coves plat. That roadway doesn't line up with what Whispering Coves was considering. We we do think that the location that this development is looking at is in a better location long-term. It's shifted more off that intersection, so staff is kind of supportive of kind of where they're placing that roadway. The property is still in the town of Verona, so there's numerous approvals and steps that were required for this property to actually develop. That includes annexation agreement, a pre-development review agreement, and then this would require zoning in the entire plan development process. So this is, once again, kind of the first step tonight to gauge the feedback from the Plan Commission. You know, the applicant is looking for feedback, specific comments, direction moving forward here, but you know, staff is happy to answer any questions from the Plan Commission, and the developer is happy to answer any questions tonight as well. A couple specific items that we do want feedback on tonight. I'm just going to pull these up quick. First of all, one, do you support multifamily on this property? I think that's probably the most critical question for the developer and staff. Two, if you do support multifamily, how many units do you support? And that could be stated as a range. That could be kind of stated as just a general kind of ballpark of what you would consider appropriate. And then three, would an exemption be considered for not having the one underground parking space per unit? So that is now required as part of our new ordinance that we adopted of having that one underground space. This is under the building, not necessarily underground, so that would be an exemption that would be required, but trying to gauge the feedback from the Plan Commission, is that something that you're supportive of or not? So once again, staff would be happy to answer any questions, and then obviously the developer is here tonight to help clarify and answer questions as well.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm going to call on myself first. Quick question before I get into comments. So around the dog park or the proposed dog park, would that be general, like public parking, or would that be private parking associated with the apartments?
It'd be private.
Okay. That I definitely don't like. If it's a public park, it needs to be publicly accessible. And having it surrounded by private parking is not, I mean, it can be a private park, but then it doesn't count. Mr. Sayre?
I should clarify as well, the city would have no interest in that being public from our standpoint, just from a maintenance standpoint of the smaller the park, the more challenges we have from a mowing and maintenance standpoint. So just putting it out there as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's, yeah, kind of in line with my thinking as well. As a private park, it's, you know, it's private property. You can do whatever you'd like. But as a potential public park, it would need to be public. In regards to some of the questions, I would be open to multifamily at this site. With the stormwater challenges, I just don't think you're necessarily going to see single-family homes being economically feasible in there. And two, like the city, along with the county, and I believe Madison as well, just paid a ton of money to upgrade County Highway PD, and it can handle a lot of traffic. Combined with the fact that there's an employer on the west side of Verona that employs a lot of people, and so this would put it in a perfect location for people to get there pretty easily. So I think it would work. You know, as far as units go, I wouldn't be willing to commit at this time, just because I would want to kind of see how the rest of the project shakes out. And then regarding the exemption to underground parking, I think I'm open to the exemption, although I don't necessarily like it, and I think underground parking ultimately helps keep more green space out and makes our city nicer, and I think it's a nice amenity for the people who live in the apartment, so I'm less inclined to grant that kind of exception. And then I guess my only other comment would be more of a comment to staff, is that I think on that north-south road, we would want it to have dedicated biking facilities. But that's all the thoughts I have for now. Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Takalong.
This may be a question for the applicant, but the parking on the first floor, are those like private garages, or what exactly is that first floor parking situation?
And if you could introduce yourself again.
I'm Kirsten Rhymes with Edward Rose and Sons, and those 6 garages, on one of the photos of the buildings, it shows those 6 garage doors, and so those are individual garage stalls, so they can be used for parking. People can also store materials in them and things like that, so they are personal space for those units. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I guess, sorry, going along then with my question is that if it's private garages on the first floor, I might be amenable to granting the underground parking exemption, provided that there's the same number of private garages available as we would allow for the underground parking, just to make sure we have the same amount of space available with indoor parking that's under the building.
I believe I saw Alder Posey's hand up.
Yeah, I was just following up with a question about that. So to clarify, those are only private garages for specific units?
They are private garages, and they would be available to any of the residents of that building. Typically, we see of that building, because they do have an internal entrance into that building, so it would be residents of that building. But yes, private garages, they would be dedicated to, it's not a specific unit, it's whoever out of that building would like to rent those, and we would lease that out to that resident.
Okay, so it's an additional rental cost for the residents to be able
Correct,
to
because-
utilize the garage.
Correct. Out of our, we have 22 developments that have garages available to them. Most of them are detached garages even. Out of those, that's about 9,000 units that have available garages. 1 in 3 units has an available garage. That's it. That's the most any of our developments have, is 1 out of 3 units having a garage. And at this point, because they're rented separately, we only have about a 92% occupancy. So having 100% garages per unit, we don't see that as something that our residents are interested in at this point. So that's why we're proposing the 1 in 3, basically, or 1 parking stall per 3 units.
Can I follow up to that? Properties, because I know, and I'll tell you, it was interesting, one of the examples was brought up, because when I saw this, I thought Northern Virginia right away. How many properties have you developed up in this northern climate where people are looking for a garage to be able to park in as just part of what they're doing?
Most of our garages are in Michigan, Wisconsin,
Okay.
Nebraska, Iowa. We do have some in Alabama, but for the most part, they're in cold, snowy climates.
Fantastic, thank you.
Most of our developments in general are in cold, snowy climates, whether they have garages or not.
Okay, thanks.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I think after hearing that, I would be less likely to want to grant the exemption for the garages, just because I don't like parking be an additional fee, because I think it encourages people then to park on a surface lot as opposed to under the building, which is going to lead to more people needing street parking and/or parking lots, which sort of negates the green space gain we're trying to get.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Lytle.
Thank you. While I acknowledge we want to consider each development on its own merits, because I know there are people trying to keep track at home, there was a proposal a couple months ago for the east side of Highway M for a larger apartment development. Does anybody recall the rough number of units proposed there?
Mr. Sayre?
I do. I believe it was about 700 at the time.
Okay.
Is that correct?
And then I also don't recall the multifamily portion of Whispering Coves, but there was a portion of that I don't know if we got to the details of the multifamily for Whispering Coves.
We did not. I mean, I can do a quick rundown if you want on just projects throughout the city. It's something that would be helpful right now.
I think, it'd probably
Okay.
be.
Yeah, so right now, we have, for the former school on West Rowan Avenue, we have 132 apartment units that'd be market rate. We have 100 units that would be for workforce housing on that site. That's the Steve Brown Alexander project. The clinic here on East Rowan Avenue, that's wrapping up right now, that has 2 units on it. Obviously, Classic Old National, which was talked about tonight, has 63 units on it. On North Main Street, the Oakmont will be opening up, I think, in October. That that has, I think, 99, 100 units in there. On the Woods at Cathedral Point, we do have an approval for that, for apartments on that property. It'd be 100 units. I believe their intent is to start those potentially this fall still. I'm just kind of going through the list here. Sugar Creek Commons, which is under construction right now, total is 284. The bulk of those, I believe, is in the back. There's a standalone multifamily building on that property that has not started construction. West Madison Bible Church had almost 20,000 square feet of commercial space and 700 apartment units. Whispering Coves, they had some land that was planned as multifamily, but to your point, we never got into those details of that, or it wasn't, I don't believe it was approved. It was potentially discussed, but nothing on that site was approved, and that was for the front half that abuts, it's closer to County Highway M, kind of behind the commercial areas. So that's the quick rundown. We've got some other projects that are hanging out there that have been discussed that haven't really gone anywhere. I didn't mention those, but those are the ones that, of the bunch, I guess, that have more traction than other ones that have just been discussed.
Thank you. And I guess my personal belief is that it's not really our place to put our finger on the scale in terms of what we think the market out there is for multifamily. But I do think there are enough people tracking this and have concerns around the city about it that it's fair for us to think of the big picture. I guess one question for staff around, we're talking about the alignment between the way Whispering Coves was platted, being closer, the Winter Cove way. So how do you approach something like that when there are two independent developments and we're trying to get them to bring their streets into alignment so there's not a jog in the road or worse, a dead end, someplace like that?
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've talked about that a little bit with I think both developers, and it's kind of chicken or egg a little bit of who goes first. Now, in this case, we do know that school site is no longer needed, so we do know that that school site's going to have to change for that reason. So we've had some meetings with Forward Development Group. I think between Edward Rose and FDG, they're pretty close to kind of where those roads need to line up based upon the last concept we saw from Forward Development Group. Now, obviously, that has to go through the approval process. So it's, as of right now, Whispering Coves has not been recorded. The plat has not been recorded as well. So I think our preference would be to have something more similar to what Edward Rose has kind of in place here tonight. Does it move a little bit here and there? Sure, we're fine with that. But big picture and long term, that probably makes more sense. It makes those commercial outlets more viable from a development standpoint as well. But ultimately, we do know that school site is not going to happen as a school. So that's going to have to change, and at that point, we'll get it corrected as part of that process.
Great. And I think the final comment, just to echo what some of the other commissioners have mentioned, for a development as large as this for at least Verona, I would definitely prefer to see more underground parking or less surface parking than we're seeing with this initial proposal. I don't know that I personally would have to see it at 1-to-1, but I think, as the mayor pointed out, it really limits the amount of green space and other amenities that could be there when they're trying to attract renters. So I think the total number is on the large side, but of units, but overall, I'd be more concerned about making sure the units are higher quality and include amenities like underground parking.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Hankert, then Alder Posey?
Thank you. So you asked the question of us, I think, or at least the staff did, do you support multifamily here? So I'm looking at in 2012, the city began, quote, residential development policy limiting multifamily developments to 20 to 50 per year. You just rattled off 1,500, and you weren't even dealing, well, no, excuse me, yeah, you said, you counted up 800, and then you tacked on the 700 for the pie in the sky granted at the other corner of PD. And you didn't even talk about the riffraff, so there's more. You didn't talk about the future, so there's more yet. I mean, let's face it, we are in a different paradigm. So to answer that question, this is not about this project. This is about, I don't know, larger development trends in this country, in this city, and what does the city want? So I don't even know how to answer that question. Do we want multifamily in this area? In many ways, it makes total sense. Like you said, there's a certain employer up in that neck of the woods. It's the trend. Bulk development is better than single family in terms of ecological impact. So, I mean, I realize I'm musing, but I also think that if we're to answer that question, it's a big, huge step back for us at some point here. And I don't know if that's right now or over beer later, but that's my feeling. As far as the one-to-one parking thing, the underground, I mean, if we have recently instituted a one-to-one thing, I don't want to come right off the gate and give an exemption on the first project. That's not a great way to start. So, I realize their market analyses tell them that only so many people want underground, but why are we asking for underground? Is it for space? I believe it's for space, right? So it's not about what their customers want or don't want. We don't particularly care about that. We're asking for space. So as long as they can give us the space, then I guess I don't care about how they do it, but it seems so. So anyway, to Pat's point, I don't think, I would not be in favor of leaning towards giving them an exemption right off the bat. So, I mean, the long-range plan for this area, if I'm not mistaken, it called for some commercial up front to PD, makes sense, they're still doing that. It called for some multifamily, but then it called for, what do they call it, rural residential, or it's basically single family, and that's not here. So it's going against, if you will, the long-range plan as was foreseen in 2012. Is it appropriate to hold to this project's feet to that fire? I don't know, but I think we really need to give some serious thought to if we're going to go all in on this multifamily, fine, go for it, build 1 million units here, I don't care. The street can handle it, as long as the neighbors don't care. Jam them in, but is that what we want to do? I'm sorry to take this but this is the time to take this in this direction, is it not? This is the before they get to details kind of thing, right? So, I guess I definitely support multifamily in this area because it does make some sense, but I just think that going 100%, aside from the water issue that you brought up, so you're telling me this is a really challenged site from a water perspective, is that correct? Yeah. And so multifamily is easier to deal with that, gives them more land, if you will?
I mean, it's a function of the imperviousness of the site, so, I mean, it depends on how you slice and dice that, I guess. Yeah, the issue is that the water, like Adam said, doesn't go anywhere, so normally you'd meter out a slower amount of flow that matches the existing condition. In this case, it's more of a volume issue because it can't go anywhere. So you're going to generate much more volume with any development, and that's why their basins are so large. So trusting that they have those sized properly, I mean, they should be able to handle it. They just have to do the design correctly.
Okay, but if I'm hearing you right, then to develop this site into, say, just some multifamily up top towards PD and then more single family down low, we just wouldn't, they'd lose that land and therefore they couldn't handle the volume issue? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, you can do it, you can develop the site however you want, I guess. I mean, you just have to plan for it from a stormwater perspective, and that's why the basins that they have are the size that they are. If they change the land use, that would probably change the basins.
Okay.
And it's all conceptual right now, but I've had some conversations with the engineer, and they understand the issues.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll end it there. I realize I'm more musing than giving answers, but I think at this stage, that's what they're asking for, so there you have it. Thank you.
Alder Posey.
Thank you. So real quick, I'll just hit on the points they asked for. So I am open to a multifamily at this spot, but I would like to see greater diversity of the housing options as well as available for purchase, because I do believe that's something we are missing in our multifamily development. So things like townhomes, whether it's condos, but having solely the same or similar structures is something, again, I brought up Northern Virginia. There's a reason people move here to Verona, and I want to keep our identity. Purchase options were a big thing for me. As far as number of units, I'd be willing to see what's available once those things are met. And then I would not be supportive of a garage exemption for this design. Thank you.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker Long.
Yeah, I agree with Alder Posey that I would like to see, some 3, maybe even 4-bedroom places so we could get families in there. I know there's a real lack of that housing in the Verona area. And so some bigger numbered bedroom sites would be really nice.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Question to staff, did we cover it?
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Look up.
Last chance for any feedback? And then, Mr. Sayre, if you give us a brief overview on the timeline for what's next. Obviously, it's contingent on what the developers are going to decide to do too, of course.
Yeah, next thing, it goes to council next Monday for feedback. Same kind of process, so no different than a project that is looking at developing in the city before it comes into the city. We take it to the Plan Commission and the council for feedback, because obviously there's an annexation component to this as well. So this will be on the council agenda for next Monday night for discussion, no action, and feedback again.
Great. And with that, we'll move on to item 8, which is reports and comments from the Planning Department. Mr. Sayre?
Thanks. I don't have too much tonight. Our next Plan Commission meeting will be October 4th, as it stands right now. It's a light 3rd? What? Oh, it's the 4th. Okay. I saw your hand go up. It's, October 4th. It's a light agenda as of right now. November is shaping up potentially be a busy meeting, so just to give you fair warning on that. The stuff we thought was coming in October is coming in November. So please mark your calendars. Staff continues to work with Steve Brown Apartments, Alexander Company on the redevelopment of the school site. I think potentially you might see some work potentially starting in there in October. We're working through agreements on that project. Costco, I think, is potentially starting this week. I haven't driven past there today, but I know they had a bunch of earth movers out there to get that project rolling, so that will be coming here pretty quickly. And I think that's it, unless there's any questions for me or Catherine.
Any questions for Mr. Sayre? Oh, Commissioner Tucker Long.
For the school property, what's the timeline or procedure that we're taking to figure out what to do with the actual old school building?
They're still working on that, so
They are?
COVID has obviously thrown a wrench in a lot of things. That's one of them, obviously, from a gathering standpoint. So it's being preserved. It's not going anywhere, but it's another casualty of COVID where it's been lagging in the sense of it's tough to really plan a space until you know when you can actually use the space. So
Sure.
they're working on it still, along with the finalization of the park designs as well.
Okay, and do we, has any movement been made on the preservation progress? Like, any filings or anything for the preservation?
No, they're still looking at, the best thing that we can do as a city is going to be no different than the Matt's house, where we'll require that to be deed restricted. So we'll deed restrict that it can't be demolished, and unless there's obviously an act of God or something, but it cannot be demolished by choice. So no different than Matt's house.
Other questions for Mr. Sayer? Seeing no hands, we'll move on to item 9, adjournment. Motion to adjourn would be in order. Commissioner Hankard.
I so move.
Motion by Commissioner Hankard. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tucker Long. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 7:33 p.m. Thank you.